So welcome everybody to today's webinar. The subject today is speed meets resilience. So I didn't want to wait a long time for extra people to join in because it is all about speed. I'll just share some slides here. Have I shared my screen yet, Mike?
Yes, you have.
Oh,
That's
good.
perfect.
Okay, so that's good. So we were looking at resilience. I just want to share a few thoughts on today's webinar. So first of all, just myself from Meridian IT, just playing host today. Mike Potter joining us from IBM Storage Brand. Thanks, Mike, for taking the time with us today. Appreciate that. And just a little bit of housekeeping. So we will be recording today's webinar. It will be able to be distributed for colleagues that have not been able to join. And I'm sure it'll be published on social media as well. So the Meridian YouTube channel. Chat is disabled for this session, but if you have any questions, then please do use the Q&A feature, and we'll pick up any of these questions at the end of the session. So as I said, time is precious. We're going to keep this as snappy as we can, particularly as it is about fast recovery. So Mike, can I pass over to you?
Thank you, Alex. Let me share my screen. There we go. Hope you can see that. So my name's good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending if you're watching the recording. My name's Mike Potter. I'm one of the partner technical specialists here at IBM, and I work within the storage brand. So what I'm going to do is just give you a bit of an overview of cyber resiliency with our flash systems and how we can go about it to help you as a client to enable you to be more cyber resiliency. Also, we have the ability to recover your data within 60 seconds, which is really important to you as a client. Trying to get to my next screen. But what I would say is that we're having lots of discussions around storage, is that we need to think of storage not traditionally, not just capacity and speed, but also around other elements of how we can add features and functions to the screen has just disappeared. Features and functions to you as a client to enable you to have more business resiliency and also to add more value to your business. So it's not just about the capacity and speed, it's about sustainability. For example, could we help you to be more efficient as a client? Could we give you more agility and flexibility? Could we insert automation into your storage platform? But then, of course, our main conversation today is about resiliency and how we can actually make use of what we either have today as a platform to ensure that we're not overly complicating our infrastructure and our software stack, because a lot of these items might be there, but you might just not be aware of them. So the big question that I get asked a lot of times when I do these presentations is there such a thing as 100% secure? And as we've seen throughout the whole of 2025, the answer is unfortunately no. So what today I'm doing is separating the two of cybersecurity and cyber resiliency. So cybersecurity is stopping people getting in to try and keep people out. Bad actors is the phrase that we see. And we see clients investing hundreds of thousands and lots of different software elements into do this. But what we have seen is that it's not just about that. We've got to assume that possibly the worst could happen, which is that somebody could break through that cybersecurity and cause some real damage to you as a client. And that could either be data damage or represent to your reputation, which is possibly even worse. What cyber resiliency is, what we're talking about here, is the ability to recover quickly, despite having that worst element happen. And what we have seen throughout 2025 is that, unfortunately, a lot of clients and a lot of businesses have their heads in the sand to think that cybersecurity is enough. We need to make sure that we have a plan B, and we need to make sure that that plan B is simple, is as minimal as simple as complex, not as complex as it needs to be, and that can we restore rapidly in a cyber resiliency situation. So what we've been doing as IBM, we're actually looking at, say, how we can advance our storage platform to help you not just to be a storage platform, but to be much more than that. So what we've seen is that traditionally, storage is always about capacity and performance, and also allowing to recovery with backups and the like. But what we've been doing is saying, well, how can we take this further as a vendor and help our clients? And what we've done is been able to look how we can actually indicate a ransomware attack is happening within your storage system. And because we're doing it within the storage system, this enables us to track every single IOP within that system to know what is going on at block level. And that enables us to see quicker than anything else. And this feature and function that we've built as IBM is built within our flash system and our storage virtualize. So we're not asking you to add on an extra layer of software to add an extra layer of complexity to it. This is something that exists in line on the systems today. And we've been doing this since 2023, which a lot of people are quite surprised about. And what we're able to do is look at those statistics on that array and then decide if there's a actual ransomware attack happening. So why would we actually detect it on the storage array? Well, for me, there's a couple of reasons. Not only is it reducing the complexity within your organization rather than adding extra software layers, because you're going to have the cybersecurity element dealt with, which is a complex area on its own. But what we tend to find is that a lot of our clients are ingesting and using a lot of data really quickly. So some of our systems can do up to 1 million IOPS, even beyond that if we push them really hard. But what we're doing is that we're doing it is we're writing it to storage. Rather than scanning it in backups, which would be much slower, because for example, you might take a backup per day. Some people might take it weekly. And analyzing it in real time enables us to be much more efficient. And because of this, it enables you to take advantage of this, I suppose, feature that we have as IBM built in within our systems. All you need to do is to make sure that you know that it's there and how we address that with your particular workload. So what we tend to find as IBM that the conversations that we have is usually about multiple defense layers. So as a client, we often usually think that we might have elements of backup covered. We might have elements of some snapshotting covered. But do we have the ability to pick out our most valuable data so we can restore it quickly? And that's what this is all about. This is all about getting you back online if the worst was to happen. Looking after, say, your core database, your core system, and making sure that we can have that covered so we can restore it really quickly. So what I've done is I picked out my favorite 6, as it were, steps to cyber resiliency storage. These are my personal favorites. So the first one you're very familiar with. This is multi-site data replication. So most of you as clients will have multiple sites, high availability. With IBM systems, we're doing it as policy-based replication these days. So we can actually set it as a policy. So your volume groups are set into that and it's done as standard. But what happens is this is a traditional method of HA and DR, if you like. So if you were infected in your primary site, unfortunately, that means it will be replicated over to your secondary sites. So on its own isn't an answer, but it is certainly a great method to have for HA and DR. As you can see in the top right, we even have some clients have 3 sites, some even beyond that. My second element of cyber resiliency is quantum level encryption. So as IBM, we are the leader in quantum development at the moment, and we have a couple of systems around the world. That's a whole different presentation, trust me. But what it shows is that us as IBM, we're really taking encryption very seriously because we expect all our clients to have encryption turned on. And a lot of people say to me, surely quantum is going to be far away. So quantum really is actually probably going to get off the ground, probably officially and probably in the market around about 2030. So we're only talking in 5 years' time. So if you're making an investment in systems, you need to make sure that we have that quantum safe cryptography turned on. And again, it's something that we offer as default as IBM. The third element is one of my favorite ones. We have something called IBM Storage Insights. And what Storage Insights does, it actually gives you a view of your systems. So it gives you, say, if you had multiple systems, you'd be able to address if there's actually anything advisory on those systems, best practices, plans for growth, and all that kind of stuff, which kind of sounds reasonably obvious. But for me, the interesting part is that we now have a security posture dashboard. Because if I was to ask an average guy in the street, do I know what our best practices are on flash systems and how to secure them? The answer would be no. And the answer would be, I would read a manual somewhere. But what we have here is a tool that actually advises you per system to understand if you have the simple things turned on. For example, do you have data access control on there? Do you have a network configuration that is locked down on there? Is your encryption turned on, which it should be. So this is a really simple way for clients to make sure that they're secure, because what you tend to find is that we have lots of statistics around how clients are being breached. And one of the most obvious ones is through logins. So people don't hack in, they log in is quite often what we hear as a phrase, as a term. But going on to today's session, let's make use of frequent immutable snapshots is one of the key elements of what we're doing. So what we can do on our flash systems, we can have immutable safeguarded copy snapshots. And this is part of how we are quick to restore for you. So we can make automatic, regular backups, snapshots onto your primary array. And what we're doing is basically making a secure snapshot so nobody can actually mount it, nobody can attack it, and it is basically a air gap by design on the same system as a primary array. So what we're doing with that is we're looking for your most valuable data. So we can protect that within a safeguarded copy. We're not saying we're going to protect everything in your array. We're saying we're going to protect the most crucial data to get you online. And this prevents any modification. We can't delete it. We can't remove it. And it helps you to be more secure as a client. So safeguarded copy, what's it all about? So this is included with all our flash systems array. So you don't have to turn it on. You just simply have to do it. You have to look at your existing data to decide what is the most valuable, your minimal valuable company, if you like. And then you can decide if you want to protect that, how often you want to protect that, and then you can snapshot that on our systems. So what safeguarded copy does, it creates that hidden copy of data on the primary storage. It's important that I'm defining it as the primary storage. And that means that our critical data is still residing on that system. So it's not being backed up to elsewhere, like a backup layer, for example. I mentioned multiple layers. This is keeping it on the primary, the critical data on our system. So nobody's able to get that and nobody's be able to map that. And if our critical production was to suffer a cyber attack, we then have a way to rapidly recover the data. We can then actually restore the data within 60 seconds because it's on our primary array. This isn't really, in some ways, a complex method of doing things. This is quite a simple method of actually thinking, how can we restore quickly? All we're having to do is define what our critical systems are, snapshot them, and keep them on their array. What I would say to you as a client is look to do this as soon as you can. we can adjust the amount of snapshots or the timing of the snapshots as you go along. So we can decide that how you wish to change that as a client. For example, some clients are 9 by 5 businesses. They might take a snapshot at the beginning and the end, maybe the middle of the business. Some are 24/7, so they would have different snapshots for clients. We can adjust that to suit your particular needs. So the fifth element on this particular chart is really how we're changing the game as IBM. So what we have within our systems is our FlashCore modules. And on our FlashCore modules, these are all built in within our IBM systems. So I'm not asking you to do anything. These are just doing it as they're going along. These FlashCore modules are detecting what's going on with your data. And how we're doing that is we're taking around 40 data statistics. Originally, when this came out, we were at 30. Probably next year, it will probably go even beyond that. So we're looking at different nuances within your data to decide if there is something odd going on within your system. And we're doing that at every single IOP. So if you're doing 50,000 IOPs, we're doing that all the time. We're doing that within your system. And we're able to flag to you if you've had any change within your data. So a little bit about our FlashCore modules. So our FlashCore modules are calculating this estimate of randomness, if you like, on every IOP. How we're doing this is that our FlashCore modules are not just your average storage device. They are actually have intelligence within them. So you can see here we have two small risk cores to process all this information. So we're getting the array to do the work for you. And because of that, as you as a user, your IOP, your performance of the system, we're not putting any overhead on that because we're using the cores on the actual drive. So our performance still manages to stay high. Our availability stays high. Our consistency of platform is there. We're actually using the hardware. So we see out on the market today, there are some software elements to do this. But what we're doing it is in hardware makes it much more efficient to do it. And of course, the main topic of today, the elements of speed. So speed of recovery is absolutely everything. But because we're doing it within our hardware and because we're doing it within our array itself, and we have those immutable snapshots, that means that we're much more protected against any random attack from the outside looking in. And because we're doing it on the primary storage, you might say today, I'm doing snapshots on my array. But are they immutable? The answer is probably no. They might just be regular snapshots. If we can change that to immutable snapshots alongside our detection, makes a huge difference to you. What we have seen is that if we leave something undetected, this is based on a worst case scenario, this particular slide, is that potentially up to 2.5 petabytes data could be encrypted with 24 hours, which is quite a ridiculous amount of data because some clients don't have 2.5 petabytes of data. But this is how dangerous these things are. But what if the simplicity of having FlashCore modules, we could detect it right at the beginning. We could detect it in seconds. We could have a much smaller impact to you as a client. You could have that alert to decide we've got those copies. We can bring the valid copies online for you to quickly. So that breakthrough combination of having threat detection on our FlashCore modules and the combination of having our safeguarded copies on our primary arrays enables you to have a much more smaller impact on your primary array. So what we're seeing is about multiple layers. You might find that, say, you might have file system scans or snapshot scans or software-based anomaly detection in your backups, but your backups are much longer and much slower. And what we're saying here is that we're using the ability of the storage arrays to look at that within seconds, rather than hours or days or weeks or months, like we've seen, unfortunately, in the press of a lot of clients out there. We're enabled to restore that data quickly. But what we're seeing to say is about that recovery fast, the innovation within our storage platform enables you to do this. And what we do as IBM is that we're going to see much more innovation in our storage platform moving forward. So it's not just about that capacity, it's not just about that performance. Those are still there, and those are still numbers that are driving upwards, that availability number and that performance number. But then we've got to make use of our storage arrays, not to overcomplicate our infrastructure stack, to make sure that we're making use of whatever we might have built in within our system. And this is built in within our flash systems, right? How can we help you as IBM? What we have is a security and resilience assessment. It's well known as SARA. Um, the guys from Meridian are happy to help you out with this. What this is a completely neutral assessment. So this is not a product element. This is about identifying any blind spots. It's not a test for anybody to understand or anything like that. It is based on best practice. It's vendor agnostic. It might well take place in our office or your office or Meridian's office or wherever. And this is something that you can take away and decide what to do with as a client and work with Meridian as your trusted advisor. So it assesses your maturity as a client to say, do we have all these best practices covered? And the answer usually is we have most of them, but we might be missing a few. And those ones we can decide, well, how do we address them in the simplest way? How do we make that impact to you as a client to make sure that you're as resilient as possible? And that is it for me today. So I'll hand it back to Alex.
Thanks very much, Mike. I appreciate you sharing all the content there. That was extremely useful. So I'm just going to wrap us up really quickly. I don't see any questions coming in the Q&A just yet. So if any questions have come up, then do pop them in there fairly quickly. So Mike talked about recovery from cyber impact, not cyber assessment, cyber attacks. Just a couple of industry trends, interesting stats that I've found that I just sort of put on the table for us, because I appreciate that there'll be some people who have joined the webinar here or some folks listening to the webinar and you don't have IBM storage on-prem, and that could be a difficulty, because whilst you like the features that Mike has talked about, where you've got the inline ransomware or encryption detection, and you've got products and tools that you're not familiar with, but you'd like to look at, actually as part of your piece to the business to justify why you'd want to look at IBM. Maybe it's just part of your business, would be to say, well, 93% of UK businesses have received phishing attacks. That's a UK government statistic, actually. Equally, if you look at the dwell time for a threat actor, so somebody who's got onto your system, so think about Jaguar Land Rover, how long were the cyber attackers on the system before they pressed the button to encrypt everything? Well, the average, according to recent survey, is in fact 194 days. So it's it's a big old number. And 30% of attacks use valid credentials, and we saw that with Marks and Spencers. That was a request to update a password that was just telephoned in, wasn't really checked, and the attackers were in. So interesting statistics. So what do you want to do about it? What are your options? And the options for me are you could do nothing. You might be well covered already. You might be in a great position, and you want to use this collateral, this webinar to pass on to a friend. You could think about doing something. Maybe you are already thinking about doing something. Most people are. The compliance departments and regulatory departments within organizations seem to be growing. Your data protection officer might be interested in this. And so it might just be an action for you to pass this on to somebody who would be interested. Or as Mike presented to us on the final page of his presentation, you could engage with a SARA study. It's really a very low impact for your business. It does need the right people to attend for you to get the most out of it, but it's a free consultative exercise. And if you're really interested in that, then when the slides get distributed, these URLs are all linked, so you can just click and go through. Or you can email. I've put an email contact at Meridian here. We've got an advocate for these particular assessments, Ed Carter. So if you wanted to email Ed for more information, then he'd be delighted to get back to you. So that is the end of our webinar. Thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. There's no questions that have come in on the Q&A. So I will just quickly share a Cheerio screen with some contact information. I'll leave that on there for a few seconds. And when you get the handout, there is a final slide with a bibliography for some of those statistics that I put out there. So IBM's X-Force survey, cost of a data breach report, and UK government cyber breaches. But I shall say cheerio. Thank you for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and maybe we'll see you at another webinar soon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.